Everyone is watching gold prices for signs of a crash. They're watching the wrong thing. The real warning sign is sitting on your doorstep or in your kitchen. In 2025, America's biggest box manufacturers permanently shut down 10% of U.S. cardboard production. It's the biggest collapse since 2008. And when companies stop making boxes, it means one thing: products aren't moving and global demand is dying. And that economic shock is about to hit your bank account. A select group of companies sit at the center of America's packaging industry: Smurfit Westrock, International Paper, and Packaging Corporation of America, the Big Three. Together, they form the backbone of the U.S. cardboard supply chain. Nearly every physical product in America passes through their brown boxes at some point. In 2025, those companies and their rivals permanently shut down plants, eliminating roughly 3.9 million tons of production capacity. That's around a tenth of everything North America can make. That single year of shutdowns was nearly twice the scale of the cuts that followed the 2008 financial crisis, and 2008 was the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. That's not the actions of a healthy market. International Paper alone shut down 2 massive mills in Georgia capable of producing nearly 1 million tons of cardboard every year. Around 1,100 workers lost their jobs. Then came the closure of the Red River Mill in Louisiana, along with additional plants scattered across multiple states. The company has earmarked at least 7 more closures, with more than 700 additional layoffs lined up for 2026. This wasn't isolated to one company. Smurfit Westrock cut more than 500,000 tons of capacity on its own, shutting down a mill in St. Paul, Minnesota, and ending board production in Texas. Those closures wiped out roughly 650 American jobs. Even the Packaging Corporation of America began trimming plants. Industry-wide, job losses had cut past 4,500 across North America and Europe since late 2024, to the equivalent of an entire mid-sized factory town erased in about a year. From just one sector, it was a cardboard bloodbath. Sure, closures and restructuring happen in business. It's normal practice. But this feels different. A whole industry is walking away from plants that took decades and billions of dollars to build. For one reason: the orders are not there. This wasn't some one-year anomaly. Since 2023, the cardboard industry has eliminated roughly 5.4 million tons of production capacity, one of the largest contractions analysts say the sector has ever recorded. 3 million more tons is expected to disappear by 2027 through permanent closures and mill conversions. To understand what 3.9 million tons lost in a single year actually means, imagine 4 of the largest box mills in America demolished and never coming back. Because mills don't shut down like this in a normal slowdown, and it will have massive implications. The physical frame of world trade is being taken apart in real time, mill by mill, town by town. But to understand why a dark mill in rural Louisiana should matter to you at all, you have to stop looking at the factory and start looking at the box on your porch. Industry estimates say roughly 75 to 80% of all consumer goods spend part of their life inside a corrugated box. Some sources put that even higher, which means cardboard isn't just packaging. It is the container that carries almost the entire physical economy. The television in your living room arrived in one. So did the pallets of groceries and the parts inside your car and the package left on your doorstep. Cut off that supply and you begin squeezing the economy. The hidden cost is buried in your weekly shopping. Packaging eats a real slice of the price of food and drinks, somewhere around 8 to 15% depending on the product. It often works out to roughly a tenth of what you would pay at the shelf. On a $5 box of cereal, somewhere near 20 to 40 cents of that is printed paperboard and inner liner. So you're not really buying $5 worth of cereal, you're buying roughly $4.60 plus a brown board that you'll throw away within a week. That happens every single day of your life, it just never shows up on a receipt. Every item that you buy carries a packaging cost folded into the price. When cardboard gets scarce, that cost climbs, and nobody up the chain absorbs it for you. The maker passes it down, the store passes it on, and it lands on you. Not all at once, just a few cents here and there. Until one day everything feels slightly more expensive and nobody can quite explain why. You never connect it back to a paper mill shutting down in Georgia. That's exactly what makes cardboard such a powerful economic signal. It is exactly what happened through 2025. Demand collapsed, yet cardboard prices stayed near multi-year highs. Normally, when demand falls that hard, the price will fall with it. Here the opposite happened because producers were closing their mills fast enough to keep supply tight even as the orders dried up. The box on your porch is not trash waiting for the truck. It's a time machine that lets you see the future. And it does that because of one stubborn fact about how products get made. Box orders are a known early warning signal. They run ahead of factory output by roughly 3 to 6 months. A product doesn't move instantly. It starts on a factory floor. It gets packed into boxes. It's loaded onto trucks and sent to regional warehouses. From there, it filters down to smaller distribution centers and then finally to store shelves. From the first box order to the moment it reaches your home, that system runs on a roughly 90 to 180-day schedule. The boxes always come first. Right now, U.S. box shipments in the third quarter of 2025 fell to their lowest level since 2015. In other words, a decade of growth effectively disappeared in a single year. Total cardboard production was down about 4% across 2025 versus 2024. And the decline didn't stop there. It continued into 2026, with the first quarter showing one of the steepest drops in years. Across the major makers, daily shipments fell all year long. The orders did not slow, they stopped. Roughly half of surveyed box makers said their orders had gotten worse. The industry is openly preparing for more pain through the rest of 2026. This is not one bad quarter that a strong holiday season fixes. It is a long slide, and it's now lasted long enough to kill plants for good. An early warning signal that normally runs 6 months ahead of the economy is sitting at a decade low, and it is still pointing down. At that point, the real question is no longer whether the goods economy is slowing, it's how long it's already been slowing while almost no one noticed. This is where something called the bullwhip effect comes in. It's where a small change in what shoppers do gets blown up into a huge swing by the time it reaches the factory. Imagine an actual bullwhip. A small flick of the wrist barely looks like anything at the handle, but at the far end it cracks with force. That's what demand does in a modern supply chain. No one is immune to it. Walmart and Target came out of the pandemic on the wrong side of that whip. They were buried in excess inventory. Warehouses were full because they had over-ordered when demand briefly surged. So they did what every retailer does in that situation. They slammed the brakes on new orders and they spent months selling down what they already had, instead of replenishing it. When the stock finally cleared, the warehouses didn't refill at the same pace. And that was the part nobody was ready for. In August 2025, Walmart CEO Doug McMillon talked about the cost of restocking. As they refilled their inventory, he said those costs kept climbing week after week, and he expected the pressure to last into 2025. When even the largest retailer on the earth is refilling its shelves this carefully, the caution doesn't stay at Walmart, it travels up the chain to everyone who supplies it. A destocking cycle is normal. It fixes itself. Everyone just waits it out. What's happening now is a freeze that's lasted longer than expected. The stores cut orders hard to clear the glut, which forced box suppliers to idle lines, which then forced mills to announce closures they can never undo. Each link overreacted harder than the one below it, the bullwhip cracking down its full length. Because once a plant closes, it doesn't behave like a pause button. You can't just switch a mill back on when demand returns. The machines get dismantled and sold off. Workers leave and they don't come back. And even if demand eventually recovers, the capacity usually doesn't. So the system doesn't snap back to where it was, it resets lower. That's what makes these cuts so dangerous. The damage doesn't end when the slowdown ends, it lingers. It's not just American loading docks that are seeing it, it's choking the biggest factory engine on the planet. China's imports of corrugated paper fell sharply in 2025, down 17.87% year-on-year between January and November, landing at just over 2 million tons. This was not a one-year blip. The slide had already started the year before. China imports paper to make cardboard boxes. Those boxes move the goods that eventually end up on Western shelves. So, when those paper imports fall, it means less packaging capacity and less production flowing through the factories. Eventually, less inventory reaches the stores abroad. This is what makes it relevant to you. It isn't some far-off story about another country's economy. A 17.87% drop means fewer containers crossing the ocean, which means thinner stock and firmer prices on the staples you grab without thinking. But it's not one-way traffic. Roughly 10 to 15% of U.S. cardboard capacity exists to serve exports, the boxes that carry American goods out to the world. And that side has been clearly under pressure. Liner board made for export slumped through 2025. Trade is slowing in both directions at once, and cardboard boxes are one of the few places that double squeeze shows up first. But if things are looking bleak, why does the official economy still look perfectly fine on the news? U.S. GDP grew at a 2% annual rate in the first quarter of 2026. On the surface, that reads as a healthy, growing economy. But two things are hiding in that number. First, it actually missed the 2.3% growth markets had expected, so it wasn't exactly a win. Second, the whole jump rode on just two things: a giant surge in AI spending and a rebound in the federal government spending that only happened because a shutdown had crushed the quarter before. Strip out the AI boom and the government bounce, and the first quarter growth would have been close to flat. The economy didn't broadly grow. A small part of it boomed loudly enough to drag the average up, and someone called that average a recovery. Personal spending slowed, the part of the economy that's ordinary households buying ordinary things. The personal savings rate fell to 3.6%, its lowest since October 2022. That means households kept spending only by saving less, not by earning more. Fuel prices were already pressing on what families could afford to put in the cart, so the economy has split cleanly in two. One half is a roaring boom in tech and construction, driven by data centers and chips and software and federal money on a giant scale. The other half is the goods economy, where most people actually live and work. That half is shrinking steadily, exactly the way the box data warned it would for a year. This is the root cause, and it explains the squeeze you're already feeling at home, even while the news insists the economy is growing. The official numbers aren't exactly lying, but they are hiding the truth. They mix a good slump with an AI explosion and report the average as if it described your life. It does not describe your life. It describes a server farm's life. The headlines say growth. The boxes say otherwise. People always assume gold is not an early warning of impending economic disaster. It never was. Gold is insurance, the thing people buy after danger is already in plain sight. That's exactly why its price tends to spike after the damage is done rather than before. By the time gold is all over the headlines, the blow has usually already landed. Cardboard is the opposite. It runs months ahead of the real economy because it sits at the very front of every decision to build anything. And right now, it's sending one clear signal. None of that is a guess about the future. It's already happened. It might not be a single dramatic crash one morning. It's something slower and heavier. A long stretch of low growth and high costs. The shelves will be thinner, the prices on the staples you can't stop buying will be firmer. The goods economy will keep shrinking underneath a number held up by AI and government money. For an ordinary household, that means paychecks buy a little less every month. The average American job probably sits in the half of the economy that's shrinking. The boom everyone keeps talking about is happening elsewhere. The box makers have already made their call. They shut down their mills and let workers go. They aren't waiting for the news to confirm a crisis because they can already see it in their own order books. The warning sign is sitting on your front porch right now. It costs nothing to look at, and so far, it's not been wrong. When the first link in the chain breaks, it doesn't stay there. It moves through production, and then prices, and then jobs, until the effects show up everywhere at once. That's when things start to get uncomfortable. Find out what happens when it all comes tumbling down in What If the U.S. Economy Crashes? Or watch this instead.